Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're analyzing a blueprint for corporate restructuring that is so radical, it really forces you to reconsider the whole meaning of profit, of ownership, of corporate purpose itself.
It's a big one.
It is. We're diving into MicroCosmic International Cultural Creative. Now, you probably know them as a publisher books, audiobooks,
Mhm.
but we're looking at their astonishing plan for 2026.
The Creator Trust Fund.
Exactly. And to be clear, we're not just looking at a company trying to be a bit greener or setting up a small charitable wing.
No, this is not standard CSR.
Not at all. This is a total philosophical overthrow of the company's foundation. The sources detail how they plan to move from a standard private ownership model.
Where, equity means maximizing wealth for a few people.
Right. And they're shifting to a system where the majority of the company's value gets locked into a trust dedicated to global spiritual enlightenment and charity.
And what's vital to grasp right away is just the scale of this commitment. The sources describe it as moving beyond just being mission-driven. They call it an unshakable altruistic commitment model. The whole point is that it's designed to be legally, perpetually bound to its spiritual purpose.
Perpetually.
Their ultimate goal, as they state it, is to pilot a new era economic paradigm. They want to institutionalize this selfless commitment so that the company's success will just perpetually fund these missions, completely free from corrupting financial pressures.
Okay, that sounds incredible.
Yeah.
But the key question, the really skeptical question for us as analysts is how? How do you actually pull this off?
Mhm.
How does a corporation use a legal document, a trust deed, and stock ownership to prioritize, as they say, a grand plan for global enlightenment over standard shareholder profits?
Yeah.
And maybe even more fascinating, what happens when you put an objective, unemotional AI in charge of monitoring a spiritual mission?
Let's get into it.
So let's start with the absolute foundation, the nature of ownership. For, 400 years, equity has meant power, control, a right to dividends.
The standard
But in this plan, that whole definition is just overturned. The model shifts from simple private ownership to what they call a mission-driven structure.
It's a really radical reinterpretation. I mean, you look at the traditional view, and equity gives you control and the expectation of maximum financial reward. But MicroCosmic International is framing their new structure in this visionary context they call the era of Maitreya.
Okay.
And under that vision, owning stock is transformed from a right of extraction into an explicit trust responsibility. It becomes a duty to shepherd the company's resources for the benefit of the trust's grand plan.
And the main vehicle for that is this Creator Trust Fund. It's going to hold the majority of the shares. The sources really stress the importance of the trust deed itself. That legal contract, that's the mechanism that locks everything in forever.
Exactly. The trust deed is the absolute linchpin. It's the critical legal tool, and it's designed to be completely irrevocable. It mandates that the company must prioritize the mission, the altruistic goals, over the simple, typical pursuit of short-term profit.
And that's crucial because it legally binds the company even through chaos.
Through market events, yeah.
So let's be brutally practical here. What happens if a bigger competitor tries a hostile takeover, an M&A bid, offering shareholders a huge premium?
Right, the classic scenario.
A CEO would normally be bound by fiduciary duty to accept the best financial outcome. Does this trustee just supersede that?
According to the sources, yes, that's the whole point. The trust deed enshrines that grand plan above conventional fiduciary duties, since the trust holds the majority stake and its legal mandate is the mission.
Hands are tied.
Well, its hands are guided. Any management change, any M&A has to respect that core purpose. The trust's directors, not private shareholders, get to decide if an action actually advances the spiritual mission. If the M&A doesn't serve the vow, it can be legally blocked, no matter the financial gain. It's like a bulletproof vest for the mission.
Okay, so here's where the analysis gets even more complex. The structure is explicitly designed to prevent capital distortion. For anyone who isn't deep in corporate finance, what does that distortion actually look like when a company has, say, ethical goals?
Capital distortion happens when money, driven just by greed, forces a company off its higher path. So imagine MicroCosmic is running an expensive, long-term spiritual education program.
Okay.
A traditional investor who's only focused on the next quarter's earnings might use their board seat or their influence to demand that those mission expenses get cut just to boost the stock price for a minute.
That's distortion.
That's distortion, when the financial tool overrules the ethical goal.
So the trust structure just blocks that pressure. It stops those secular investors, the ones focused only on material gain, from using their leverage to interfere with decisions on spirituality or education. The mission stays pure because the capital is legally constrained.
Precisely. The power doesn't just vanish, it gets permanently channeled. The controlling interest, which is where the ultimate power lies, is legally forbidden from prioritizing wealth over its altruistic responsibility. It just fundamentally flips the entire power structure from extraction to protection.
And that shifting control leads us right to their innovation on how they handle surpluses. They're trying to set up this closed-loop, new-era economic cycle. So if the profits from the trust's shares aren't flowing to a few wealthy individuals, where do they go?
They get perpetually reinvested. The earnings are basically infrastructure funding for this new era they envision, and the sources are very specific here. The earnings have to be allocated to either global charity or spiritual enlightenment education.
So it's like a massive self-sustaining endowment.
Exactly. But instead of just funding a university, it's funding a world mission. The wealth truly belongs to the mission itself.
Which makes the company a profit engine for a nonprofit outcome.
Mm.
But a structure like this also implies a huge internal shift in motivation. They bring up this concept of collective wish power resonance. Is the basic idea here that working for a fund that's dedicated to serving all beings inspires a higher level of creativity than just, a typical bonus?
It's the difference between a job and a vocation, really. The sources argue that when your employees and your partners know that their daily work translates directly into quantifiable, global altruistic impact.
When it's not about personal greed.
Exactly. When the success mechanism is decoupled from individual greed, it generates a motivational force that, conventional compensation just can't touch.
It's like the energy you see in big open source projects or global aid groups.
That's a great comparison. People contribute not for the check, but because the outcome serves humanity. MicroCosmic is trying to institutionalize that dedication inside a for-profit structure. They believe that dedication will, paradoxically, make them more effective economically.
That's a massive leap of faith in human psychology, or maybe spiritual psychology. Which brings us to the operational side, because the sources are very clear this whole thing doesn't run on human virtue alone.
Not at all.
It relies heavily on technology. The AI system here isn't just an advisor. It plays the key roles of objective monitor and executive assistant.
And that tech integration is absolutely critical for the integrity of the vow. Humans are fallible, we have biases, we're subject to temptation. This is where AI and blockchain come in to ensure what the sources call extreme transparency and fairness.
Okay, so how does that work in practice?
Well, the blockchain creates an immutable public ledger. Every single fund flow, every bit of capital deployed from the trust is tracked and verified on this chain.
So it's all public.
It's all verifiable. Then the AI system acts as the objective monitor, cross-checking that all these transactions strictly comply with the original vision in the trust deed. It basically eliminates the possibility of creative accounting or someone diverting funds.
So it provides accountability, which is crucial when you're dealing with abstract concepts like spiritual education. But you said the AI also acts as a dynamic optimizer. How does it go beyond just auditing and actually help execute the mission?
It's a resource allocation strategist. The AI is constantly processing massive amounts of global data, real-time needs assessments, economic shifts, humanitarian crises, you name it. It then advises the fund on how to deploy MCI's resources most efficiently based on what's happening in the world.
Could you give us an example of how that might work, how the AI might prioritize things?
Sure. Let's say the trust has $1 billion to distribute for the year. A human committee might just decide to split it 50-50 between, say, disaster relief and spiritual publishing.
Seems reasonable.
But the AI might detect that a huge, catastrophic global event has created an overwhelming need for emergency aid right now, and that need outweighs the immediate benefit of a new educational initiative.
So it can shift priorities on the fly.
And optimize them. It could recommend an immediate allocation shift, maybe pushing 70% to disaster relief for 3 months, and then reallocating back to education once things stabilize. The key is that the AI makes that decision based purely on objective mission optimization, removing the bias or political maneuvering that could influence a human board.
So if you step back for a moment, the tech provides the verifiable objectivity for a mission that's fundamentally driven by these intangible spiritual goals. Historically, faith-based groups have always struggled with accountability, right? They had to rely on the virtue of their leaders.
Right.
But here, technology creates this layer of immutable algorithmic accountability. It's just radical.
It really is.
So let's look at the implementation. Moving to execution. What's the roadmap they're suggesting for the 2026 restructuring phase, starting with the legal groundwork?
The legal foundation has to be non-negotiable. The sources strongly recommend they immediately consult with specialists in charitable trusts to make sure the terms in that trust deed are absolutely 100% irrevocable.
They can't risk it being challenged later.
No, permanence is the entire point. They don't want to set this up and then worry about it being dissolved in a decade.
And who actually runs this complex thing? You've got the AI monitor,
Yeah.
but you still need human oversight. They propose a governance body, the Mission Committee.
Yes, and this committee is maybe the most unique human element. The sources detail a very specific composition: highly virtuous, wise people, AI governance experts, and senior corporate executives.
That's an interesting mix.
It's an intentional blend of spiritual integrity, technical mastery, and, corporate management skill.
Okay, I have to ask the critical question here. How do you vet a highly virtuous, wise person? I mean, virtue is subjective. It's almost impossible to measure in a corporate setting. Isn't that the weakest link in the whole chain?
It is absolutely the biggest challenge. The sources imply the selection process for these people has to be totally separate from corporate politics, focusing on proven ethical track records, detachment from material interests. But the key safeguard isn't just their virtue alone.
It's the AI again.
It's the AI and the blockchain. They are supervised by the AI monitor and constrained by that immutable ledger. Their role is less about discretionary spending and more about supervisory mission alignment. The executives keep the company viable, the AI experts keep the tech secure, and the wise people act as the ethical compass.
But the AI is the navigation system.
Exactly. It makes sure they don't veer off course.
So putting this all together, what does this mean in the larger context of global corporate governance? The sources are clearly positioning MicroCosmic to be a global leader after 2026, to be the proof of concept that you can balance economic viability with spiritual purpose.
Right. They're trying to prove that you can be successful because you serve a higher mission, not in spite of it.
It's a huge endeavor.
It's a monumental endeavor in corporate architecture. The sources describe it not just as a change in equity, but metaphorically as a temple construction. The entire exercise is designed around one fundamental principle. Permanently, wealth belongs only to the mission. It's institutionalized altruism at the highest corporate level, designed to outlast human lifetimes, market crashes, everything.
It's a striking proposal, using the hard logic of technology, AI, and blockchain to enforce a soft, spiritual commitment that transcends human lifespans in volatile markets. And this raises an important final question for you to consider. In a future economy, can true corporate integrity and mission permanence only be achieved when governance, accountability, and resource allocation are outsourced to immutable code and objective intelligence, rather than relying on human virtue alone?